Hello everyone and welcome to the Commercial Awareness Compass, your weekly guide to developing commercial insight that goes beyond just the headlines. Each week we take one major story and break it down to help you progress through 3 levels: beginner, intermediate and advanced commercial awareness. Whether you're just starting out or already have some understanding, this programme is here to help you think like a commercial lawyer. By the end of today's session, you'll have practical insights you can use in applications and interviews. So my name is Daniel Shepherd. I'm a law conversion student and a future trainee solicitor. And today I'm joined by Emma, a solicitor with extensive experience in commercial law. She'll help us explore today's key legal and business topic, offering insight in how lawyers tackle complex commercial challenges. So welcome, Emma. How are we doing today?
I'm great, thanks, Dan. Fresh off holiday, so really looking forward to getting stuck into this one.
I've still got that nice holiday time.
Thank you.
Bless you. So to start the beginner session, do you want to break down what this week's story is?
Of course, as much as I can do it justice, because it's ongoing and it's huge, and I'm sure it's going to grow even more arms and legs before the end of this session even. So it's a really good one to talk about in this moment. Of course, we like to do ones that are live and topical as much as we can. But with that, we must say that because it is an ongoing situation, we are going on what's on the news. Of course, we have no internal insight of what's going on in the businesses at the moment that we're going to mention, so do bear that in mind. There'll be nothing confidential, broken or anything like that. Of course, we aren't privy to what's happening right now, but when businesses are in crisis, I think it's important to do the lawyer thing and highlight that at the start. So with that in mind, you're all thinking, what is going on? Of course, it's the M&S cyber attack that we are going to cover today as best as we can, because a huge cyber attack, it seems, started over the Easter weekend, unfortunately, for Marks and Spencer's, and this incident has disrupted so much of the retailer's business. If you think about cyber attacks generally, which we'll get into the understanding of shortly, just how much impact they can have, even if they're self-contained within a matter of hours or days. But this one's been such a long time, so there's lots of things to explore, Dan, in this topic today.
So to start off, what actually is a cyber attack?
Great question, and I'll try to answer it. I am not a cybersecurity expert, but it's usually, well, it's when the security systems, the IT systems of a organisation, a business, a unit, a cohort, are attacked externally, usually. It could be internal, which is also equally unfortunate, but by an external force, I mean when I say externally, and they somehow penetrate those systems and bring them down in a way that impacts the business's operations. So if you think of all of the different tech and software and systems that we rely upon daily to use, if those were penetrated and accessed, let's use a very simple word, accessed by somebody that you don't want to access them, once they're in there, they will have different options of attacking those systems internally. So these people are very clever, very techy, and very clued up in terms of the different directions and the trails that they can go in and what devastation they can cause from the inside. But usually that's what happens when something in the cyber sphere of a business or an organisation is attacked and then brought down. Now, depending on the level of access they've got, they might have different levels of protection. Well, every business will have different levels of protection in their cybersecurity. When an attack happens, it depends on what level that gets to as to how serious this is. So you would think for data, for example, personal data within a cyber attack would be one of the hardest things to access. But if that is accessed, then obviously you've got to a certain level and through a lot of the cyber security defences that a business would put up to prevent that from happening. And then, of course, we get onto the devastation and the legal impact of those things as well. But yeah, cyber attack is just having some sort of cyber system attacked at whatever level that has the impact of bringing a business down.
And why is a cyber attack significant for a major retailer, like specifically like M&S?
Because of just the pure halt that it can put to a business. So M&S, for example, they lost all ability to take contactless payments. As a retailer, that's where you get your money from, right? They might have other means of income, you know, as a lot of businesses do, like investing profits elsewhere or, you know, getting some sort of return. But their main financial and the priority of them being in existence is to take payments from consumers and to sell things as a retailer. So it's significant because they couldn't even accept that. They have, gosh, how many people M&S employ, I don't know, globally. They, all of their employees wouldn't have been able to work in a way that they should or could have done, because if the shops aren't functioning, why do you need somebody there behind the tills, stocking the shelves? You'll still have stock coming in, but nothing's being sold and shifted. So it's a big impact on profitability. You've got people that are working remotely, like more in maybe exec or office roles, that the VPN, so the access that you use to the access point that you used to be able to get online from home or remotely was also shut down, so nobody could check emails. Just imagine a business just not being able to access anything from a cyber point of view as a result of this. It's crazy what it can do, and very unfortunate. It's not great for any business to go through because of the impact that it can have.
And as we kind of like round out the basics, how has M&S and kind of the media like responded around the cyber attack, and what was it kind of said about how they've like publicly like communicated this?
It's a good question, Dan, because of course you would like to keep this under wraps as much as possible because of your reputation and because, you know, it's quite confidential. They'll be working through things that nobody's privy to apart from a set group of people. But with M&S being such a household name and everyone having access to the app, you know, you and I could go on the app now and still see that orders aren't being accepted. So you've got to make some sort of statement. They have issued a statement. They haven't given any information as to what type of cyber attack it was. So also for those that are interested in another layer of the technical side, you've got ransomware attacks and all different sorts of things in those different directions that I was talking about. They've not released information about that. I haven't seen anything about data protection, but again, that will be very closely guarded as to, you know, that I'm sure that they'll be speaking with the regulators, which we'll get onto later about that. But they have issued a statement, of course, and they have to really, for lots of different reasons, keep the consumers up to date who might be concerned about different things. Because of course, M&S have a bank as well. It's not just about the retail, it's the banking side. Lots of different stuff. But yeah, there's been some generic statements being flown around.
So I think that nicely rounds at the basic level. So as we move into the intermediate, kind of why might companies like M&S who have dealt with this need legal advice?
Oh gosh, lots of different reasons. And M&S will have their own internal legal team who I do not envy right now, who will have been involved from the start of this. It's one of the key stakeholders that you would get involved when you're creating a crisis team. I imagine a senior lawyer from M&S, again speculating, but would be on some sort of internal crisis policy document that's named, like you must involve this person. And the reason for that is, leaning towards your question, Dan, is that there's lots of different legal elements that cross over with a cyber attack. So you've got the approving the statements that you just mentioned. I imagine the lawyer would have looked over those to make sure there's no liability that could result from anything that's been put out there in the public. They would need to liaise with stakeholders, and by stakeholders I mean key people in the business, to make sure everything that they are doing is above board and legal. You might need to review contracts. You might need to involve your insurance counterparts or external insurers to make sure that they are kept appraised of everything that's going on. M&S will owe lots of money out at the moment. If it's not coming in, what's the impact on all the contracts that they have with suppliers? M&S have lots of different brands, don't they? If you look at the brands that they sell, they will have contracts between them. Lawyer needs to advise there. lots of different priorities will be moved around for this. So of course you've got the internal side, but also the external lawyer involvement too, which you might involve. So as a generalist in-house, you might not be particularly savvy on cyber attacks because you might not have experienced many, or, well, hopefully not have dealt with many with the businesses that you've worked with. So you might also engage an external lawyer that specialises in this type of law too.
So there are a lot of different like business and legal and kind of public facing challenges that they need to face, often conflicting with each other. How has M&S presented this so far? So have they, I don't know if they've not made a statement on it, but how is it likely that M&S would deal with this situation, especially from an internal legal team this time?
Again, a good question. And I just have to put myself in the shoes of, a hypothetical lawyer there on what maybe I would be involved in as an in-house lawyer or commercially. But the first thing, just even if you think generically, common sense from a lawyer's point of view, it's priorities, isn't it? And by determining priorities, you would look at the risk appetite of the business. So every business is different, and every business will have their own risk appetite. And what a risk appetite means is it's usually a statement set by the board or the shareholders as to how much risk they will take on certain things. And that will be different depending on what industry you're in. So, for example, Marks and Spencer's, for them collecting personal data, you would imagine that probably top of list would be legal priority. We've got to deal with the personal data. One of the first questions I would be asking is there been any attack on any personal data? Has there been any data breached, stolen, leaked? Like, what's going on there? And then the answer to that question would not be a yes or no to a lawyer. It would be lots of different technical answers, and then the lawyer would need to appraise themselves with understanding that enough in order to be able to advise what we do. So priority one, if there is a risk, you'd look at the guidance from the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, and see if you needed to notify them first of all, because you've got a very, very short window under GDPR to notify of a potential breach. And then as a result of that, I'll be looking at our contracts with people. Do I need to notify our consumers within so many hours of a potential data breach if there was one? Do I need to notify any suppliers, employees, all of that sort of stuff? So my priority, and I imagine of most businesses, would be regulatory data protection. Then, of course, on the banking side, you've got the financial services part. So in terms of a lawyer's to-do list and how to get through those things, you'd look at the risk appetite, and that's just one big example that I can think of an area of work that you'd be getting stuck into.
And what about the sort of work that they'd outsource to external law firms? What sort of focus would they give to that sort of work?
I can imagine, Dan, it would be, and again, without knowing the expertise of the internal teams, but it would be more of the technical stuff that takes a long time, because this is a crisis situation. You need everyone in their seats doing the right jobs most efficiently as possible. So if there needs a big investigation into something that's going to take time, and you need a big team and it's worthwhile paying for them to do it, maybe a mass contract review, maybe they've got thousands of contracts that say different things about what happens in the event of a cyber attack. Well, one lawyer or one team of an in-house lawyers can't deal with all of that when they've got other priorities on, like making sure that the regulatory or the top risk aspects of the company is protected. So you'd outsource things that take the longest, that are easier to outsource, so you can just give an instruction and they can get on with it whilst you can do those things. You'd outsource things like the investigation of what actually happened. Perhaps if you've maybe not got your own technical cybersecurity individuals who also have a knowledge of the law, who can bring all of that together, you'd outsource that. Anything that would need an in-depth review of financial services regs that would take a lot of time. So it's thinking about that sort of stuff that a law firm would do as standard and have check sheets for, whereas an in-house legal team would be out of the norm of their day-to-day. So you'd rather get that done. But also maybe the higher risk elements that you'd want to make sure you could point to and say, we got another view on this, and we've got external advice, and we've got the private practices firms insurance, and we can stand by it. So also there's a little bit of tactical elements of an assurance piece or an accountability piece that you pay for when you do outsource work like this as well.
And I guess that kind of leads into more what we mentioned earlier, the public facing aspect of it. If you've shown that you've gone to outside sources to like double check everything that you've done and made sure everything's complied with, I guess it kind of takes a little bit of the weight off the internal legal team's shoulders. Absolutely. Which obviously at this time,
absolutely. And don't forget, like, you can imagine that people are working around the clock on this, and are going to be tired and are going to want to make sure that they're doing all of the right things. But if you're not in that mindset where you can cross all of your T's and dot all of your I's, and you're just in survival mode, and you could do with a company who isn't as attached to it, that's also maybe another reason how external lawyers can help as well, and help with the like keeping it calm and contained and professional, and looking at it objectively as well.
It'd have been the perfect time for the internal legal team if someone took their admin leave. This would be definitely the perfect week for it.
I know it would. It's why that attacks tend to happen, around Christmas or Easter and things like that.
So I think that nicely rounds out the intermediate level. So we'll move on to the advanced level, and we'll have a kind of look at the bigger picture of this. So as we've mentioned earlier, kind of regulations and regulatory bodies that both the internal and outsourced legal teams might have to look at. What sort of the key areas to look at in this story?
So as you'd imagine, the government are involved in cyber attacks and things like this, and there's a number of government bodies or regulators that would need to be involved for different reasons at different stages. There is legislation around this, like we've already mentioned, GDPR, which is connected to the ICO, and you've also got a couple more bodies which I'll mention now. So you've got the NCA, the National Crime Agency, and the NCSC, the National Cyber Security Centre, which, again, speculating, but I imagine M&S will be in touch with. You send them a notification to say we've got reason to believe, or we are definitely suffering from an attack. And then you might get some questions back from the officer assigned to this. For example, what have you done to contain it? What servers are attacked? Is it across every single operation? Has it managed to leak into other areas, or are you absolutely sure only these parts have been accessed? For example, your tool that has all of your HR records, or your tool that holds all of your stock records, and you can see how it would be different. So they'd look to investigate that. And the reason that they do that is because they like to keep records of what's going on, so they can help generally prevent these, because it's not good for anybody, to find learnings and to try and help M&S, but also make sure that they are complying with obligations that they have as an employer, as a huge company in the jurisdiction of England and Wales or elsewhere, wherever they're registered. So lots of different reasons why you would have these regulators either on your back or trying to help you, depending on which way you look at it. So yeah, lots of different regulatory elements there to explore too, and it is quite advanced because of the law that sits behind it. But that's exactly why you might involve external lawyers too.
And I think that's quite an important point to make, because not only is this just like a commercial law kind of story, it's also a public law and criminal law story, in which, especially for when you're going into interviews, depending on where you're interviewing at, there's so many different perspectives that you can pull from with such a big story like this. So it's quite interesting.
Absolutely, Dan, because if you think about the area of law that you might be interested in, or the particular law firm that you are interviewing for, you could apply this to, a small boutique employment law practice all the way up to a big four who might be advising on multiple areas of it, because there's so many different touch points. Like if you think about the IT part, people who are interested in the Internet of Things and the law that applies, the commercial part, obviously the contracts we've covered, the corporate liability, insurance. There's so much you can get stuck into. And also a different aspect is you might also be acting for an individual in this case. If you think about the longer term of something like this, these claims are going to be going on, and the impact, the fallout of this, it's not just going to be for the duration of the cyber attack. If you can show in an interview that you appreciate this is going to be a long-standing, impactful thing, there'll be employees, potentially, individuals who have been impacted that might have a right to bring a claim that could last years. And you might be acting for the individual as opposed to the businesses. There'll be businesses' names that we don't even know of that have contracted with M&S who are impacted by this. M&S will say, oh, we've not got any money in, so we're not going to pay our suppliers, and there'll be reasons in the contract. But supplier X, there'll be loads of them who will be, trying to fight the other way. So it's that awareness and interview, you're right, of different areas of law and individuals, the short, the medium, and the long term, that will set you apart from the competition when raising a topic like this as well.
So as we kind of go back onto the long-term strategies, how might, such as the cyber attacks that have occurred here, change how M&S shapes itself in the future and how it requires legal advice in the future?
You're asking me firing some great questions at me. There's two big ones there. So how might it change its operations in future? Well, if you think about financially, how much money they have lost during this time. I do not know how much money M&S would take in a day, but imagine one day if it forecasted to get the profits in and it's not got them in. This has been going on for, over a week, a couple of weeks. So magnify that by everything else, that all of the outgoings that they've got, the payroll, etc., and then having nothing coming in, they're going to have to.
And then the cost of hiring other firms as well.
Yeah, you're right. The professional services,
I wouldn't want to see
everything. And insurance, like are they going to make a claim? Is that going to go up as a result? They're going to have to think financially how to safeguard the business moving forward. The share price, the last time I looked at this, has declined by approximately 8%, equating to a loss of around 650 million. Again, that's the last time I looked at it. I don't know what it is at the moment, but if you're thinking, there's the financial aspect to it as well. So there will be operational conversations that are happening as to how they make that up in the long term. Do they pivot? Do they think about something else that's going to plug that gap? Unfortunately, will it mean looking at costs? One of the main costs to a business is people. I don't know. You've got some really tough decisions that they might need to make and look at, which I would not like to delve into anymore, obviously, because of sensitivity. But so you think about that, then you also, the second part of your question, which was how it obtains legal advice and things like that, then this will really put their legal teams and their risk and compliance teams to the test. So it would be great to see how they perform. It will put their crisis management to the test. It will look at their budgeting. Did they budget enough for something like this? And if they've got it in the forecast, potential crisis management, maybe 100, 200k, 300k, I don't know, set aside for legal fees. If they have, it's there. If they haven't, there's another massive hole. Things to think about. But they also might be reviewing their panel. Does their legal panel perform in the way that they wanted them to? Can they ring them as they would expect a firm on a panel, or someone that they would have a relationship with, and really rely on their external lawyers, or are they not happy with that? Lots of different lessons to be learned, which I'm sure will be looked at in time, but they'll be focusing on the crisis right now, I'm sure.
And I think that leads into an important thing about how law firms and lawyers can help businesses get like a competitive edge, because not only for M&S in the future trying to future-proof themselves from these sort of attacks, but also similar sort of big supermarkets or big banks or these sort of things, when they see these sort of attacks, and to be honest, maybe a trend of attacks as we've maybe seen on certain businesses, it kind of, you can see a lot of opportunities opening for avoiding those sort of attacks, especially when you see the effect that it's had on a company like M&S.
Yeah, it might put consumers off. It might, a lot of people are wary about their financial information, and you know, if you've got an account with M&S and you order online, whether it's food or clothes or whatever, and you're at fear of your financial account, your financial information going missing and being abused and lots of things like that. There's a lot of heightened awareness on security of individuals. Like, do we trust companies, organisations like government anymore? Lots of different protests you'll see around that. So, yeah, you're right. A lot of and where else are people shopping in the meantime? So if you regularly get your food shot from M&S and for the past couple of weeks you haven't been able to do that, you go and find somebody else, and then you might have lost a consumer because they're happy with going somewhere else now. It's the recovery, you're right. So how do lawyers help with that competitive edge and advising the marketing teams on what's appropriate and what's not? But obviously the lawyers and the other retailers as well that might be competitive with those, how far can they push it with their marketing to try and mop up from what's happened? It's all business, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess that could be one of the unintended consequences. Is not only is it attacking the business, but it also puts other businesses in or can be framed in a better light when they've not received the same attack. So it nicely rounds out the entire story.
It does.
So that's it. I think that nicely finishes the advanced levels. So thank you for joining today's Commercial Awareness Compass, and thank you for joining us today as well, Emma. And remember, being commercially aware isn't just about following the news. It's about understanding how these developments shape business decisions and legal strategies. Whether you're just starting or thinking like a commercial advisor, always ask, how does this impact clients, and what can a law firm do to help? Join us next week to keep building your commercial awareness. And until then, prepare without the panic. Thank you.